Hello, welcome back to FPLIQ, where we are looking at all things blank game week 29. After, well, another slightly disappointing double game week where I'm like 900k, and I think I've gone up about 12,000 places despite having 4 double game week players. But it is what it is. But there's still huge amounts of ups and downs to come in the next couple of game weeks because it's chip season, right? We've got free hits coming out this week, wildcards likely coming out in the next 1 to 2 game weeks as well. And we're going to be specifically focusing on players for game week 29. We've got 3 categories. We've got essentials, desirables, and differentials. And we're going to go through the players in each of those sections for those who are free hitting and non-free hitting. We're going to look at a couple of free hit drafts that currently Ryan and myself have got together because we are definitely free hitting, and Tien has a non-free hit draft, and I actually don't know right now if he is free hitting because he was sort of 50-50, but he's looking with his draft a little bit more maybe not free hitting, but we'll find out later on in the show when we get onto that point. But first, introductions. We'll start with Ryan. How you doing, buddy? Football chat box, how's it going?
Not too bad. Doing well. Managed to get a tiny green without going for any double game week players. I had only 2 and I didn't make any transfers. Got a tiny green thanks to a certain Huming Sun. But yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, I made a post about why I went Tavernier over Sun because I could have immediately gone from Bernardo Silva to that, and I just took Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton, and I thought Tav might do something in that, and it's punished me quite a bit. Tien, how about you?
Yeah, no, good. So I've had my third consecutive green arrow for the first time this season ever. So yeah, no, can't complain. It was a small one, but I fully expected a red arrow, having taken a hit and didn't have as many double game weekers. And I think FPL Optimize also projected me to have a small red arrow as well. So having a green in the end was really good. And yeah, once Human Sun was the highlight. So I did the move from KDB to Son, which worked out really well. I got Palmer and I started Palmer as well over Gordon, so that was really good. And I think that was probably about it. I think Solanke got a goal, but then it doesn't really matter because his EO was super high anyway. So take a green is a green, so we'll take it every day. But yeah, I'm fully expecting a red arrow in 29 if I'm not free hitting.
Yeah, it was one of those game weeks, I think, where there was a couple of players that got the big scores, and if you had him, it was a huge difference, and if you didn't, you sort of had a meh game week. And Sun obviously was one of those players that got a nice big score. Speaking of big scores and having them and falling through your fingers, we go to a very very frustrated teacher FPL, Lucian. Do you want to explain what happened there?
Lesson of the week, people. Listen to Raw. A week back, right? Something that's been a week already. There was the temptation to own Solanke for this double game week because I did not own him. I owned Antoine Semenyo instead.
You're really quiet, Lucian, and I don't know if it's the microphone or the emotions of
let's try this again.
There
Is
you
this
go.
better?
There, perfect.
Okay, yeah. So the microphone's here. Sorry, this here. So 7 days ago, I owned Antoine Semenyo. 7 days later, I did not, because I sold him for Solanke. Play your own game, guys. Play your own game. The irony was that if I did not turn Semenyo into Solanke, I would have been able to afford Son and Tony without a hit this week. So it's compounded misery, really. I'm just grateful that the arrow was only red by a little bit. And I mean, I'm okay not owning Son or Palmer. I'm just more ruining the fact that Solanke's returns was affected by so much, right? A disallowed goal as well as a missed penalty. It could have been very different. So
100%.
yeah, hindsight is cruel.
Yeah.
Hindsight is cruel, and I do feel that whether I kept Semenyo or not, it would have been an okay decision either way. So just gotta brave game week 29 now because I'm definitely not free hitting. I have to free hit in 34.
So we are 2-2. We are 2 hits, 2 knots. Again, just a really good thing. I know we're all having different seasons in terms of our rank and plans and stuff, but it is really good to see just we're not all sat here with the same free hit team or all no free hits. Well, like we are like pretty separate in our plans. But look, what makes the Semenyo thing more difficult is the fact that you had him and you didn't. If you never had him, or if you sold him weeks ago, you wouldn't have felt anything really about it. You'd been, oh, I had him early in the season, but just yeah. I said last week I thought if you had him, I'd have captained him and not bothered Solanke with his knee, but it is what it is. It's just unlucky. But look, Solanke did something. You said it yourself. He goes and misses a penalty early in that first game. He slips. He's not. I mean, he's missed it, but it wasn't like a bad penalty. So now he's off penalties. He missed it because like he looked like he slipped on the grass, and then a disallowed goal, and he took his goal really well. Like it's funny because I woke up this morning and then I started watching the game, and I thought, do I want to sit before work? I'm on my way to work watching Bournemouth and Luton. Despite how many players were in the game, I wasn't feeling it this morning. I'm a little bit off with my football and FPL. I watched the highlights. Oh my God. Of all the games I decided to skip, it was like one of the best games in like 20 years of football. It's what I think I saw. It's the third time in like Premier League history or in 20 years or something that a team's come back from 3 goals down, right? I think, is it United against Spurs? And I want to say it was like, was it Leicester?
No, it was Wolves against Leicester.
Wolves,
United Spurs was 5-2.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a rare occurrence. And even at 3.5 time, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, there's still like 20 minutes of highlights. It's only half time. And then obviously like boom, 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 all these goals and things. And more chances as well. Like, Doherty argued he could have had another assist, but Morris didn't head it on goal. He headed it, and I think it was Barkley who missed quite an easy chance. So there was even more goals available in that game, which again, we're going to take into game week 29 because Luton is one of the teams that are playing. And also people will look forward towards Bournemouth because they're a team that could be doubling in game week 34. So it was an interesting match, but there we go. So introductions. Oh yeah, go on, Ryan.
Don't worry, Rob. You weren't the only one who skipped it. I also skipped the game purely because I'm owning less assets from the game. I didn't want to put myself through it.
I just wanted it over. I want like a band-aid, just rip it off because I thought I've got 4 players in here that I just cannot be bothered sat here watching. What's the fullback called? Owen Owanana, the Bournemouth fullback. Just Ouattara, yeah. Him scoring a goal, no assist, and like I don't know, Kabore getting a goal with no assist, and then that's it. And then that's my game week done. I thought I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it before Thursday at work. I don't want to. That's been how my FPL season's been so far. I mean, look, Doherty sat on my pitch with 5 points. I've got Porro on my bench with 7, and Van Hecke on my bench with 6, and I sold a Stupinian. Like, I just can't win. But I will say that I did go for Zabani over Kerkeres because the goal threat from Kerkeres just wasn't there at all. Like, slightly higher because he's a fullback. And I just had feelings about... Like, Zab was always going to play both games 90 minutes unless there was an injury. So I just went for minutes. But the fact that I think that's his, like, second professional goal and, like, the last time he scored... Was it Dynamo Kiev he used to play for?
Yeah.
Was it Charlie Taylor for Burnley? Well, no. Who was it?
That double game week.
Yeah, in the double game week where was it Taylor? No, it was a right back.
Taylor or Loughton?
Loughton, I think.
Loughton.
Yeah, Matty Loughton, right?
Maybe
was
one of the two.
But the idea, like, they
remember, yeah.
never score or do anything, and they went absolutely. People like, oh, I'll get him as a budget enabler for the double game week, and everyone's
I
like,
did.
oh, you can't get a Burnley defender, they're rubbish. And then obviously, like, he was like 4.5 or 4 million or something. So I'll just stick him in for a double game week, and of course he scores like his only goal and gets an absolute haul for a double game week. That was the vibes for this. It was just like, if he's gonna score, this is it. This is gonna be the game week. But there you go. So let's jump forward to what feels like there's only one discrepancy with this, and it's that Tien has put Tony in the essentials. So Ryan's got Watkins and Son. I've got Watkins because of effective ownership, sort of protection, if anything, and Son as the captain, and Tien has Son, Watkins, and Tony for the same reasons. All high effective ownerships, all high ceilings, all captaincy candidates. Lucian, is there anyone in? So when we're talking essentials, for anyone watching, essentials is like we would take hits for these players. Like we would say, like, I would not go into this game week without these players. Like, period. I would be taking hits. I'd be getting these in my team no matter what for game week 29. Like, essential. They've got to be in there. Lucian, is there anyone else that you would add to this list?
No, not at all. I think after those three players, there's literally nobody left. Maybe Areola, if you don't have him for some odd reason.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I think for essentials, like, it's cut and dry, right? You've got Watkins and Son. They're gonna have the ownership. Like, Watkins is no matter what always like 100 or like 99%, regardless, right? For effective ownership on most weeks. I think this one's pretty cut and dry. The only thing that I'd question then, would be Tien. You've added Tony here as an essential. So most people will have Solanke, Haaland, and Watkins as a front line, right? I think you'd agree that's like a template front line. So if you're saying he's essential, one, who would you be bringing Tony in for? And two, what has made you push him up to essential status when his ownership's only 12.5%? So if you don't have him and he does go crazy, it's not gonna kill you like Watkins or Son might. So what pushes Tony up for you?
Yeah, so as I said, like the essential players are players that if you don't have, they will have a very, very high potential of hurting you. And I don't look at the overall ownership, right? So I look at what the engaged managers and the higher ranks, sort of top 10k, top 100k managers will likely do this game week. Now, obviously, every single free hitter will have Tony. I don't think there's a question about that. And everybody else, I think most people would try to get to Tony. And for me, it's going to be Solanke to make way. And I think for most people, that will be the case as well. People who kept Haaland last week, they probably continue to keep Haaland because I don't think it makes sense to sell now. But a lot of people would be able to get funds from Solanke to Tony because they will probably downgrade somewhere else and do it that way. So his effective ownership is going to be very high. And arguably, in terms of attackers, I think Tony has the best fixture. Better than Sons and better than Watkins. So, and for that reason, I think quite a few people will be tempted to captain him as well, and that pushed his EO even higher. So I wouldn't be surprised if his EO at the sort of top 10k or top 100k would be around close to 100%, if not more. So so for that reason, he becomes an essential pick for me because for me essential picks are this managed shield pick, right? You pick because without them, your ranks will be likely to be hurt a lot, and then you make gains by picking the right captain between them. Just those three basically.
And I think most people, like who are engaged managers, I think most people are going to wildcard before 31, right? Like get wildcard 30 or wildcard 31. So really, like depending on who you sell, you probably like if you've not got a lot of value tied up in Haaland, then you could sell him and bring him back whenever you wildcard. I'll just put on the screen as well, just a reminder, the slide for the tick attacker. This is a one where like if you're not free hitting in 29 and you are going to wildcard a little bit later, this would be an interesting question to say. So if you're not free hitting in 29 and you're wildcarding later, would Solanke still just be your sell, Tien?
Yep.
Just so I can make way and just maybe ignore the double game week in 34.
Yeah, because the thing is, like for my team especially, I sold Haaland last week for Morris, right? So of course I can't sell Morris, I can't sell Watkins, so Solanke is the only one I can sell. And then the plan is if I can hold on the wild card for beyond 31, then Morris will become Haaland in 31. Yeah, so that is kind of a rough plan. But I think Solanke just make the most sense because he doesn't play this week. So yeah.
Yeah. Because if you wildcard straight away, you just sell the one who you've got the least value tied up in. Unless you sell Solanke and you're fine to sell him, like, period. But just the issue with Solanke is he does have Everton in 30, Palace in 31, Luton again in 32, United at home in 33, and then a double in 34. So it's a tough sell. He is the third best striker in FPL at the moment. So, and he's 7.2 million if you bought him right now. I'm sure a lot of people have quite a bit of value tied up in him. I think I got him at I can't say on my list now, but I definitely got it for under 7 million. I'm sure a lot of people did as well. So that's fine. So let's go to the more sort of thicker part then of the desirables and the differentials. So Ryan, your tagline was every template pick you see in the free hit. Now we're gonna see like scout picks and people putting drafts all over Twitter, but just briefly go over the desirables, the ones that are not essential, but the ones that you think they're gonna be in most 90%.
Yeah, so when I said every template pick you see in the free hit, basically the list you've added there, Rob, and also I would say the list that Tien has added there. Basically, like all your relatively high EO players, anywhere ranging from, I would say even above 10, 12, 10, 15, 20, 30% EO type players. From goal, your very most obvious picks, your Fleckens in goal, your Doties, Poro, Region if he's fit. Then you got Bowen, Madison, Son. Then you got well, we mentioned Tony. He could fit into either one of those. And then we've already spoke about Watkins. And then I would also add probably Morris to this. It's not really desirable, but I would say it's a high EO pick for non-free hitters as well, and probably some free hitters as well. So those are the players who fall under that list, which you will see in our free hit draft as well. You will see a few of those players, or majority of them will be that. Yeah.
Yeah, I put that up when you were just chatting through the teams. I just put that slide up and when we talk about them later on. But yeah, the key one for me is what I've said before, and it's the thing that's strange, and it's one of those decisions in FPL that feels like it's Marmite. It feels like people love it or hate it, and it's like you're wrong. And I'm guilty. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm innocent as a free hitter in 29. That when I said I think this is the correct move to make, but it does feel like every time I see people saying like, "Oh, I could get that team with a -4 or -8. Oh, that team looks rubbish. That team's not going to get it. I'm glad I'm not doing my free hit now." It's just like, you know that Martinez meme, like, oh, you're laughing but you're nervous. That's what it feels like, because it's the people who aren't free hitting I think are more worried than they're letting on, because the key thing for this is like Madison. I've said it before. A lot of people have Son. Quite a lot of people will have Madison. Not a lot of people will have Madison and Son. Loads of people are going to have Watkins. Quite a few people are going to have Tony, but they're not going to have like a Reguilon and Flecken and Tony. You're going to have one person with one of them, one person with one of them, and another person with another one. And also, I've talked about it before, the idea that, yes, in this one game you could take a -4 or -8 to get to where you are, but you'll have that team until you wildcard. We're just going to have that team for 1 week, and you've spent weeks hitting up to get to a team I'm going to get for free, just so you can maybe use it in 34 when people wildcard in a couple of those double game weekers. And we've seen quality versus quantity. We chatted about this last week, where you're going to wildcard out Arsenal and City and Liverpool players just so you can have, Bournemouth to double again, who's just had the best double you can imagine and not exactly set the world on fire. So the only ones, we're all pretty similar on these ones. Are there any desirables that you want to talk about? We'll go to Lucian first before we finish on Tien. Is there anyone not on this list?
Well, for me, guys, really, it's about the combination of players. I think the idea here is that we actually have a pretty good dilemma in the sense that besides Tony and Watkins up front, we don't really have a champion third forward. And similarly in midfield, right? If let's say you count Son, Madison, Bowen, maybe. I mean, you don't have that many choices in midfield either. So on a free hit, essentially we have 3 to 4 midfielders and 2 forwards locked in as our core. So when I look at a free hit, especially across 1 game week, right? You're picking 1 game week's results. You're not picking players from a different set of teams who you think will do well conventionally in FPL, because when you pick a player, you usually look like 3 to 4 games ahead. You plan it over a stretch. That's what I did with Semenyo in game week 8. Anyway, instead, when we talk about desirable, you're looking for a thrashing. You're looking for a 4-3 like Bournemouth Luton, right? And if you look at the 4 fixtures that we have here, right, the immediate most desirable game that we want to target is Burnley Brentford, because Burnley cannot, I think besides Sheffield United, Burnley are the team we would definitely want to offensively target. And this is where I'd say the combination of someone like Wissa and Tony in the same side, that kind of combination where you double up on a team's attack because you're up against weak opposition defensively is a desirable move. So that's what I'd like to propose to the audience. When you want to talk about desirables, don't think of desirable players, think of desirable combinations you like to have so that you target particular opposition.
All right, cool. Tien, any points about your desirables?
So for me, the desirables here are the players that if I'm on free hit, I'll probably include them all on top of the essentials. But not on the free hit, I can point out the downside for each of these players, whereas I couldn't for any of the essentials, right? So the essential, I'm just gonna get them, no question asked. For each of these players, I could pick, one thing that if I'm on a free hit or not on a free hit, I'll have to take a -4 for them, for example. Then I might not take one for any of them. I have reason to not take for any of them. So I think that's why these players are classified desirables for me. And so if I'm from free hit, I can just pick these 5 or 6 players in with the 2 or 3 essentials. Then you got a core team of 7 or 8. And yes, as you said earlier, that most people probably have these players. They're not going to have them all together. And I think that's the key difference between a free hit and a non-free hit team. And then I think on the next slide, when we talk about the differentials, those are the ones that we can start sort of like putting in to even increase that upside of the combination. So yeah, I really like it because you can start building the free hit teams from just picking the essentials and then pick your desirables. You can cross some of them out if you don't like them, and then you add the differentials, which we're going to talk about next in there as well, and that's going to be your free hit team.
Yeah, just echoing what we've already said about the idea that, and what Freddie said in the chat, like people will look like they've got 7 or 8 players, and they will have like 7 or 8 players, but they won't be the optimal. We are looking at 8 players, right? We're looking at Watkins, Tony, Flecken, Madison, Doherty, Bowen, Tony, Porro / Udogie, who's in the differentials part. We've got a core 8 or 9 players, but most people won't have those 8 or 9 players. They will have 8 or 9 players, but not the 8 or 9 players. And like you said, you get that, and then you sprinkle in those massive differentials who we're going to look at in a moment, and that's what this is, the race to get ahead. This is how we're going to get ahead of those double game weekers who free hit in 34 or 37 or even a random 38 free hit, right? These are the ones we're going to have to try and rely on to push ahead. I love a big blank game week when people don't free hit, because we don't want to fill our team with Nottingham Forest players or Luton players or West Ham players, but here we are. There's only, 3 fixtures on, is it? It's 4 fixtures, right? And and none of the big boys are in. So again, most people are used to having a couple of Liverpool, City, Arsenal, and so on, and now none of those guys are playing. So this is I feel it's a big opportunity. So the big one, we are going to look the differentials, as you've said. Like, we've got sort of a core 8 players. This is the one that's going to take you to hopefully the next step, the one that's going to give you that jump over your FPL rivals. So we'll start with Ryan on the list, the ones that you would like to point out who are different for you.
So these are your Mavericks, your rank chasers, your high risk, high reward play type players, and this is where I guess you combine a desirable player list and you start looking, can anyone from this desirable player list be taken out with a calculated risk and maybe replaced with a differential type player? So that it's like calculated risk that you kind of need to consider. And this is also the list where I guess for those who are even not on a non-free hit, and I'll probably have like a front line of Watkins, Morris, and Solanke. And this is where you're looking for your third forward, your fourth or fifth midfielder, like Lucian mentioned. These are the players that you kind of look at and go, okay, maybe I can get this guy instead of getting that guy. So I've got Cells in goal. Even though Luton have been very attacking, Forest have pretty decent defensive numbers in terms of their record. Defensive data is actually pretty good, which
I'll put
kind of
that on the
surprised me.
screen whilst you go through that.
Yeah, which kind of surprised me when I actually was looking at it. I've gone Romero in defense, mainly because a lot of people will be going Udogie and Porro. This is like a different option to that. Nico Williams, again, time with like Cells, plus attacking fullback. Roslev, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, basically the right back of Brentford. If Region is not fit, he actually becomes more of a desirable player rather than a differential, I would say, because a lot of people will start going there instead of Region. And then basically added to that on midfield, I've got Elanga, Paqueta, Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski, Iwobi, and then in forward, I've got Muniz, Wissa, and Fofana from Burnley. So yeah, that's your extreme high risk, high reward picks.
And there's only one disagreement I have with that, and the fact that it's not high risk because no one has them, and you're not selling anyone to do it. Like, these are your sort of 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th player, where if they do nothing, it doesn't matter because no one has them, and no one who isn't free hitting probably doesn't have 11 players. So it's I think that's the only thing I disagree with in the list.
It becomes slightly risky if you do what I tend to do, and where I'm starting to remove some of those high desirables like a Bowen and replacing in them with like another differential. So that depends on like your rank chasing situation.
Yeah, the thing that I really am contemplating, because let's be honest, I think defenders' options for this week are pretty bad. That's not great. I don't see really any clean sheets. There's no big value players in there. I really want to know what Spurs' front line's going to be, because I could be massively tempted to just go Maddison, Son, plus who? Like Richarlison or
Kulusevski,
Kulu
Werner,
or
yeah.
Timo Werner,
Werner.
like, and just triple up on the attack against Fulham. Because, like, if I put that into, the trackers that tell you, like, who has those three players, I don't think over 0.5% is going to have the Suns. We'll call them the Suns, right? Maddison, Richarlison, and Son. I don't think anyone's going to have those three people. But if we can find out, is Richarlison back? Is he ready to start? Maybe not. So is it going to be Werner? Is it going to be Brennan Johnson? Is it going to be Kulu? That's the only thing that's putting me off. But I love the combo ideas, because I think that's, especially in a blank game week, that could be a really, really big push. So, in terms of the differentials that I've picked out, and it's funny because some of these that you wouldn't think that they're differentials, because people like Reguilon, they're they're definitely one of the early names on the free hit sheet, right? But he's 3% owned, and if he is back, anytime you see hamstring, you're worried. He missed a game with a minor hamstring. That is something that if I'm on a free hit and he's there and he doesn't play, it's fine, actually, because you're on a free hit. You've got a sub coming on. But if it's one of them where he does start and he does pull it again mid-game and you've just lost a player on your free hit and you're down to 10, it's not ideal. Flecken, only 5.8%. I think isn't he like the most popular goalkeeper you've seen on the free hit so far? And he's 5.8% owned, which is massive. And look, I know we don't like to spend a lot of time on goalkeepers and goalkeeper transfers, but they are a good, consistent form of points. And if he comes away with a clean sheet, that's going to be 6 points. Then, 94% of the Areola's the threat to him.
Yeah.
But that's the one where that is really a free hit versus non-free hit battle, which is Areola and Flecken. And you got to look at, like, surely Flecken is the favourite for that fight, right? I mean, West Ham they've got Villa, who are supposed to be fighting for Champions League football, whereas Burnley are fighting for Premier League survival. I've got a doggy here at 9%. I have Porro in my proper team, and I'm probably going to sell him for the free hit him out, and bring a doggy in, because Porro seems to be offset pieces, and a doggy's looked more attacking since Maddison's return, and it's a free hit. If Porro does well and a doggy doesn't, then that's fine, but it just feels like a doggy is more of an attacking threat than Porro is at the moment. Nottingham Forest attack, especially the wingers, due to the fact we've just seen the wingers of Bournemouth absolutely smash Luton. So I know Elanga is a popular one, and he was in my team until I realised that he was dropped for the last game, and I don't know why. Whereas Gibbs White is just, on the sheet, the first 11, like, without a doubt, really. The one who I was looking at, because that third striker slot is the one that's up for grabs. It's going to be 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 for the free hit. I think most people are going to be like that. And that third striker slot is against that fifth midfield slot. And look, Tony and Watkins, they're done, right? So now it's going to be like a Morris or a Wieser against your Morgan Gibbs White, or maybe even a Bowen and Kudus double up. Bailey, who I'll talk about in a minute, he's on this list as well. But the one who I was looking at for a forward was Forrest, was Owanyi, because of the really hot run he was on before he got injured. And then it looks like he's not the starting striker at the minute. It could be Chris Wood. And when it comes to question marks, you don't want to be, using a free hit on players that are question marks. So I think just Gibbs White is nailed. Elanga is possibly more threat, but we've just seen him get dropped. But equally, the next game, Morgan Gibbs White could be dropped. And then Elanga's back in the side. Was it a rest? We don't know. And then, Wieser, he was in my first draft. I had the Tony Wieser double up, because Reguilon was out at the time. So I had Flecken, Wieser, and Tony. But there's just the Morpay issue. Morpay himself was on a good run. So who starts against Burnley? Because Wisa, I think Wisa's got 2 in 2. 2 in the last
3
two,
in
I
3.
think. Is it 3 in
I
3?
think.
But anyway, he's in decent form. Are you going to drop him for more pay right now against Burnley? I just don't know. And when it's a team that I don't really know, I don't feel I know much on, I'm a little bit iffy about it.
Yeah, 3 in 3, by the way.
Yeah, 3 in 3. So he was. I think he could be the great shout. It's for me. It's that the what's going to come down to the wire, and I think what the difference maker is, because it is the differential section of your team, is are you 3-4-3 or are you 3-5-2? Because that last decision feels like it's a coin toss, and it's one of them where you just know you're going to choose the striker who gets 2 points, and the fifth midfielder is going to go and get like a hat trick or something, and it's just going to be an absolute killer. But finally, from my one, and I know this guy well because I told you guys I was going to double up on DRB and Bailey ages ago, or I should have just sold DRB for Bailey. He's only 6.2%, but he only plays about 70 minutes a game. And I know that because that's usually when DRB comes on for him for like 20, 30 minutes. But every time Villa attack, he's there. He's somewhere. And Villa are one of the like best scorers in the league. If I just put the attacks in the box on as well. Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Bournemouth, and then Villa for attempts in the box in the last 6. But every single time, goal or assist, the threat from Bailey's the big one. And the fact that he's only 6.2% going into a blank game week, I think it's really, really good. Tien, any ones that you want to point out that we've not quite gone over?
Don't think so. I think all the names already been mentioned. But I think I just want to stress that like the free hit in a big blind game week like this one, you can't lose. Like unless you go really, really, really out there in terms of like you forget about the essential, you ignore all the desirables, you go all differential, then obviously there's a chance that your players don't do well and you get a red arrow. But you got to be extremely lucky if you pick sensibly to not get a green arrow. It's just a matter of how big that green arrow is. And yeah, as he said, it comes down to maybe 1 or 2 players that go really big. Like picking that's Semenyo that give you a 15-pointer as opposed to someone else who give you a 2-pointer, right? But if you got the core teams, especially the core teams of players that you think pretty much everyone has, like free hit or non-free hit, then you're fine. Like you are fully protected, right? So then you got you play around with the combinations, and you have total freedom to play the matchups. Whatever way you think a match will go, you go heavy on the teams that you think will do well. You double up or triple up. You total freedom. You can do whatever you want. Like if someone had a slight niggle, you get rid of them. You replace with the next best guy. It's just so easy. So things like if you think Spurs going to do well attacking wise, but not very well defensively, right? Then you don't even go Poro or Udogi. You go like triple midfielders, like the 3 sons that you mentioned. That's going to be huge because no one else can have it except for you. And yeah, like the double up of Tony and Wissa up front. Like not very few non-freeders will be able to get to that. And then you can double up or triple up on the defense that you think might give a clean sheet. It's probably difficult to pick from these fixtures, but you never know. Like you just go all in. You don't have to hedge your bet. Like you don't play your attackers against your defense because you can do that. Whereas for most non-free hit teams, there will be like Bowen playing against a Moreno, for example, and Watkins playing against Areola. So basically for every non-free hit teams, you got players playing each other. Whereas for your free hit team, you can build a team that don't have that. So I think that's the benefit of a free hit in a blank game week. It's a big blank game week that people don't talk about. a lot because it's just like, oh, the upside is low and all that sort of thing. But you just need one player to go really big. And you're looking at a 15, 20 point gain just from that player, right? And then the combination will give you a big boost as well. So it's a guaranteed success. It's just a matter of how big that green arrow is, really.
Unless Ariola pulls off another penalty save masterclass. And everyone else blanks, like you've got as a differential, like Flecken concedes 3 and finishes with 1 point, and Ariola gets a penalty save, clean sheet, bonus, and finishes 15. But I mean, if that happens, look, that happens. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I
Yeah.
was going to get Ariola on a free hit against 2 attacking players in my side, because it wouldn't be much sense. Like, and you've said it as well, and that's an advice I'd give to people too. Like, there's only 4 games, but try not to have too many of your attackers against too many of your defenders. So I've got Doherty in, but I'm looking at his assist potential rather than his clean sheet potential, because we all know the quality of balls he can put into the box. So, there's no point in, if I'm on a free hit, why am I going to have Areola against Watkins? I've got like Bowen against Watkins because I think there's going to be goals, so it doesn't matter, right? They can both score hat tricks, lovely. It doesn't change their points. Lucian, is there any differentials that you've felt that, because I know you're not free hitting, but is there any that you would have liked to have rolled the dice on this week?
So many, Rob, so many. Okay, so let's put it this way. What Tian has said, banking on the outcome fixtures, is usually what I would bank on in a double game week team. In a double game week that is heavy, I would usually look at the combination of fixtures, predict results, and go heavy on those results. And everyone's playing it their own way. But if I were to come up with a differential strategy, right? The word differential itself means that you know what everyone else is doing, and you're differentiating against it because you know something that other people don't. So, as much as I'd like to say, as much as I'd like to explore the fact that we are unique owners of certain players or certain combinations of players, I usually class that in desirables because that's what the free hit gives you access to. Whereas when you differentiate in a free hit, you are not differentiating against the masses, because I do strongly believe that we have so many more engaged managers this season that majority of us engaged managers would be playing the free hit in 29 anyway. I don't think there are that many that would not have the free hit. So I actually like to preach the fact that if we pick a differential strategy, we are differentiating against the free hitters, not the non-free hitters. And this is where I like to say that you look at the set of results again, and you actually pick the second most likely scenario. So you're differentiating against the most likely scenario by picking the second most likely scenario. Brentford against Burnley is a very good example, right? If you were to pick 3 players against against Burnley, you're definitely gonna try and get 2 attackers and 1 defensive player, likely Flecken. So this is because we assume that Brentford will either shut people out 2-0, maybe 3-0, that sort of thing, right? That's like the most desirable result. Then you ask yourself, what is the second most desirable result after that? Is it a 3-1? Is it a David Datro Fofana goal? Or is it a thrashing? Or is it a 1-0? You see, this is something that everyone will use, everyone will evaluate differently, whether you use bookmaker odds or tactical analysis, I mean, just the very fact that I preached caution against Brentford, actually, because I do feel that Brentford have been so leaky, right? They've been playing such tough opposition, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, and they've conceded a whole load of XG. So me picking Flecken for this might come at a very bad time, actually, because there's no guarantee that Flecken gets the CS against Burnley. At the same time, I do feel that against non-top 6 opposition, Brentford are going to revert to their 4-3-3 formation. They're not going to play 5 at the back. So I do feel that further lowers the likelihood of a clean sheet. So in that particular example, I'd actually invest in a Burnley winger or perhaps, Fofana as my second most likely scenario. Same thing with the Spurs Fulham game, right? If we do feel that Spurs will concede, yes, you get the triple Spurs midfield and you get Muniz on top of that. Go with the most likely scenario as well as the second most likely scenario that you can see out of one of the 4 games. Because those are the situations I feel in this particular blank game week, right? Where we don't have a 13 million midfielder to cap. I would argue against Rob's point. Or sorry, I think it was Tian's point, where we try to find that one guy that gets 15. Instead, I'd say that we need 2 to 3 players that will get 6 to 7 each. And that comes from the second most likely scenario. I mean, you look at these 4 games, they're pretty predestined outcomes, right? Brentford to beat Burnley, Luton, Forest, and Spurs likely to smash Fulham. All of these are predestined, and we are going in heavy on the favorites. So, you've just got to ask yourself, what is the second most likely scenario, and you apply nuance to your choice in the free hit. And that's where I find, you get the edge over all the free hitters. But, that's my evaluation of the FPL landscape at the moment. So I could be wrong. We'll see after the free hits are played, how many % of engaged managers actually play their free hit chips.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting after we get the finalized data of the ranks and the hit coming out. One that we've glossed over just a couple of times, and Colm isn't in the chat today as a Fulham fan, is Muniz, the striker for Fulham, who's in pretty decent form. But again, he's against Spurs, but as a free hitter, he's not a bad option. When you were talking about as well the defending, and yeah, you're right, Brentford have been real leaky, and 2 attackers, 1 defenders feels like a good move. But just looking at Brentford's defending hasn't been great. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, around 6th for shots conceded and things like goals conceded, right? On average about 6. But Burnley, for not just defending, but Burnley's attack is just bottom 4. And they're last for attempts in the box. So it's kind of bad meets terrible. It's what is it? An immovable object against an unstoppable force. It's who's going to out-bat each other? Is it going to be Burnley's attack, but they are at home? Or is it going to be Brentford's defense? Which is
like a wet noodle against single-ply toilet paper.
Which one breaks first? Exactly. So it is a tough one. It is a tough one, but yeah. I think if you are free hitting, it would be, despite the defense being poor, I don't think anyone's not going to free hit 3 Brentford players against Burnley, who are way back down in trouble. So yeah. Hold on. Where are you going? Are you getting down? All right, she's off. Go. All right, she's gone. So that is pretty much all the differentials and sort of the squad build-up. So we put those together, and on the screen now I'll put I'm on the left in the app, and Ryan is on the right with, I think that's Plan FPL. And again, it doesn't feel like there's many big differences in our squads. I've got a doggy, he's got Porro. Both got Reguilon, both got Doherty, both got Flecken. You've got Paqueta in yours?
Paqueta, yeah, instead of Bowen.
Yeah. Is that just because you're rank chasing for that one? Or?
He ranks mini league chasing, I would say.
But if you
But chasing.
If you weren't chasing, if you just wanted to choose the best,
yeah,
would you go Bowen or what about Kudus?
I think Kudus is not a bad option. I was more looking at Kudus versus Bay as a comparison compared to Kudus versus Paqueta. Paqueta, I went purely penalties. Could be set pieces if Ward-Prowse disappears He got subbed off WordPress in the last game as well. I don't know why, but that's another thing to kind of consider. But I think Cresswell might take the set pieces if that happens. The other thing being Aston Villa's midfield is decimated to a certain extent, which I think Paqueta could kind of capitalize on. And also, the one thing I noticed from the West Ham game was when Antonio and Danny Ings came on, it kind of pushed Bowen out wide, which kind of left Bowen less involved in the game. At least I thought. So I was like, okay, maybe this is like a calculated risk that I can take. But Lucien is shaking his head, which means probably not. So I don't know. So that's like a calculated risk, that specific move.
We are both 352. I have put a poll in the chat to ask what you got, because that feels like it's one of the few decisions sort of to make by yourself, is who is going to be like, are you going to be 343 or 352? I did put a poll in the chat. 352 is just ahead at the minute. We're both 352. This isn't definite. We could
I should
change.
say, yeah, that's right. Because I had this conversation with Mira in terms of like which formation to go, because I was still uncertain on that, like that 4th, 5th midfield option versus the 3rd striker option.
Exactly, yeah.
Now I had like Morris as well. I could go Muniz as well. So it just depends on like which 3rd striker I'm comfortable with, and which 5th midfielder maybe that I'm kind of comfortable with. So it depends on those two, and also obviously Europa games for Villa and West Ham. How they go as well will impact.
Yeah. So we could change. I mean, I've got Morris sat on my bench. I could easily put him ahead of Gibbs White. Of course, injuries might happen. Maybe we just feel like they're going to be leggy after the, you know, if we're going to 120 minutes, because West Ham and Aston Villa are in Europe, right? If Villa, who's 4-0 down? Oh, that's Brighton.
Oh, that's Brighton.
That's fine.
But both Villa and West Ham both need to win. Villa are 0-0 on their score, and West Ham are losing 1-0.
But you know, if Villa can sort of cruise to a win and take a bit easy and make some subs, but West Ham's got to go all the way for a grueling 120 minutes and in or out on penalties, that you might change Alanga to Douglas Luiz, or you might have Bailey and Watkins and Douglas Luiz and attack it that way, right? Hey, Colm's in the chat. We've just mentioned you about Muniz, the Fulham striker, right? Your thoughts on him would be good. So yeah, it's just that last position that will change your formation from a 3-4-3 to a 3-5-2. And look, I've always been a bigger fan of 5/3 midfielders, because clean sheet point, it gets right down to the small fine details of, an extra point for a goal, extra point for clean sheets, it seem more likely for bonus, so it's a close one.
It's also where you hedge your bets in terms of like, this is where when Lucien was mentioning that best case scenario and second best case scenario, where you go like, I'm thinking, okay, I feel like I've seen a slight improvement in Spurs' defensive performances, but having said that, they've just lost Van der Ven, and Dragushin will be playing. So does that slightly move back against Spurs' defense? Does it get impacted a bit more? Because that's the comparison, right? If I think Spurs can keep a clean sheet, then I probably don't start Muniz. This is where we go to the don't play or try to not play your attackers against your defenders, unless it's like a case of Luton versus Forest, where we're like, there's no chance for a Luton clean sheet. At least we think there isn't, based on their defensive numbers. So we're just going to go for Doherty because he's the best attacking defender out of the lot, and we're just going to get a Forest attacker. But yeah,
I want to just touch, because I'm going to ask specific questions for Tien and Lucien, because we're the free hit guys. But just want to touch on that defensive one, and one that we've overlooked a little bit is Nottingham Forest's defense. So when we're looking at the last 6 games, so Spurs are actually the 4th best on average for defense in the last 6 games, which is good, just like we said. But Forest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a 7th for stats. And if we look at expected stats, they have the 5th best defense for expected goals conceded. So arguably, when you're looking at your goalkeepers, I quite like the idea of a Sirs goalkeeper and just having a Reguilon as a defensive choice, because I think that's potentially even more of a differential. But then you got to look at Luton's attack, and Luton are the worst for expected goals conceded. But Luton's attacking threat is gonna be the issue for that. So the question I want to ask the non-free hitters is, when you're looking at these free hit sides, and when you're looking at not just the ones here, but ones like you've seen on Twitter or YouTube or wherever, how many players are you going to go into this week with like hit points as well? Like, how many transfers you made, how many hit points, and who are you not going to have, judging by what you've seen online or here, who worries you by not having them? So Tien, first, Tien, how many players are you going to have for this week? Because I'll put your team on, because I don't know how fresh this team is. I know you sent it to me, but I don't know if you've made any transfers yet or anything. But the picture you sent me is on the screen now.
Yep. First thing first. Between the two teams, obviously, I think your team, Rob, is more template. So it's obviously more like similar to many other free hit teams, whereas Ryan's seem a little bit sort of more different. And so if you look at my team, I have Son, Watkins, Morris, right? Doughty. That's it. And then obviously I have Ariola and Moreno, which neither of your teams have. So obviously, as a non-free hit team, I'm gonna be, heavily sacrificed, right? It's gonna be heavily compromised compared to either of these teams. Not only the fact that I don't have all the players, but anything that happened to one of my players, I don't have any backup. Whereas you have a full squad, so anything happened, then your player can come off the bench as well. And then on the other hand, I don't have the most desirable players either. So player playing each other, or players that is potentially slightly rotation risk as well, like Moreno, for example. So so in terms of what I want to do, if I'm not free hitting, I'm most likely going to take at least a -4. So I'm going to bring in Tony. So that's one more from your free hit team for Solanke. And then my second move would very likely be Gordon for either Madison or Bowen. So that cross off another one from your free hit teams as well. Now, which one I pick, depending on how I feel about West Ham and Spurs. And currently, I'm slightly leaning towards Madison, not just because for this game week, but also for 30 as well, because I'm almost very likely not going to wildcard in 30. So then, Spurs have Luton as opposed to Bowen having Newcastle away. So that play a big factor as well. And because I'm not free hitting, so the players that I'm getting in, at least I believe in them for at least a couple of weeks before I wildcard. So that bring my players to 8, I think. And then I'm not discounting a third move as well for -8. So it could be a midfielder, or it could be Udogi, for example. Because once again, I wanted to have a good player for 30 as well as 29. So those are the kind of thinking that obviously I'm looking at this. So I'm gonna be -4, -8. So I'm already 4 to 8 points worse off compared
And
to all
3
the free hit
players.
teams, and then 2 or 3 players down as well. Now, how much risk do I think not having those players on top of the -4, -8 is something that I will have to weigh up, because then that's the difference between a free hit and no free hit, and then thinking whether a future free hit, whether it's 34, 37, or another game week, would make that up us more. Because obviously, if I'm not free hit now, I'm banking on the fact that a later free hit will score more points, right? Which may or may not happen. So that's the decision I'll have to make as well. Yeah, so that's I think it's come down to it. Like in terms of free hit, as we we've already talked about throughout today as well. If these teams look perfectly fine, but whether you want to increase that sort of upside chasing by going without Porro or Udogi and going with the triple Spurs midfielder and Muniz. I think for if you go triple midfielders from Spurs, I really like Lucian's point about you playing Muniz as well. You really banking on a lot of goals in that game, and then you find a different defender. And similarly, I might just play like Cells from Nottingham Forest over Flecken to avoid that double up from Brentford. If you think that Burnley could nick a goal. So you're just hoping that Reguilon, if he plays, and if he loses a clean sheet, he could get an attacking return, for example, whereas Flecken may not have anything. So you kind of like playing other scenarios as Lucian said, and try to tweak that. So you're hoping for a little bit more upside compared to just a stock standard kind of like template looking free hit team, which I think will do well anyway. But if you really want to have that sort of extra bit of an edge, being on a free hit, you could try playing around with some of those as well.
Okay, cool. Lucian, can you just run us through the team you've got now for this game week and what potential moves you're thinking of doing?
Yep. I've basically taken a -4 for two out of the three core players, Son and Tony. So Solanke and Saka swiftly left my team. And so alongside Watkins, right, I've got three core players. And I have all these leftovers from the double game week. Doty, I forgot. Wait, let me check.
Region, Taylor.
Yeah, Region. No, yeah. So I mean, essentially, I have 6.5 players because alongside Taylor and Doty, right? I have Reguilon, who's like half a player. Oh yes, and Areola. So these sets of 6.5 players makes me very tempted, obviously, to take a -4 for literally anyone else. For me, it's about the beneficiary from the West Ham Villa game. That game particularly scares me because I do feel that Aston Villa were absolutely jaded by the 0-0 draw against Ajax. And so they suffered heavily against Spurs. So, now we are seeing something similar where West Ham and Villa have that same potential. And this is where both teams have attackers that potentially make me sweat. Not Bowen in particular. I still don't rate him. I'm looking at Kudus, Pakata. These are players that I genuinely want. And even if I did take a -4, I'd be selling a Foden. I wouldn't be able to afford these types of players unless I sold Foden, and that's the scary bit because I'm holding on to Salah, Haaland, Foden, Gabriel, and Saliba at the back. I've got quite a lot of value stored up, and that's my biggest issue trying to access these players for -4, the sacrifice of it. And so, really, the question is asking myself, right? Do I want to take a free hit and get 5 more players, combination of West Ham, Villa, Spurs, and whatever defender I can get my hands on? Or do I save the free hit, treat them as zeros, and in game week 34, when I know that it's going to be a combination of blanks and doubles because some favorites from the FA Cup games will clash and play in 34, leaving a whole bunch of blanks, which allow me the free hit for some teams like Chelsea and Arsenal. Go heavy on triple Arsenal attack and have the 4 extra players from there instead with doubles. It's heart-wrenching because I have to wait for the European results. But genuinely, Madison. I think that is the only name in my mind that I don't have right now that genuinely frightens me because I think James Madison is playing some of the best football of his life. And without any European commitments and such form with such players playing around him, so many options, besides Son, the double up scares me.
I've said before, like, I only sold him because he got injured. I was loving the Son Madison double up, and I love him as an FPL asset from when he was back at Leicester. I think he's an absolutely top player who, I'd be scared not to have him this week for sure. Now, just the last question then on this part. Second last question, Lucian. When are you? So Tien's looking maybe 31 or beyond for his wildcard. Are you looking at the tiki-taka plan, which is 35 wildcard, or you're not settled into anything yet? Or what's your wildcard plan if you're not free hitting then?
33.
Looking at 33 to attack 34.
Yeah. No, 33 to attack 37.
So 37. Okay.
So wildcard 33, and then because I still have Bournemouth players, right? So these Bournemouth players are gonna have good fixtures, literally up to 33. So I wildcard in 33, free hit in 34, and essentially the wildcard is gonna last 33, 35, 36, which happens to be like the perfect time to let go of Watkins anyway. This will give me 2 free transfers, saving in 35 and 36. That leads me up to to buy good differentials in 37 when the double game weeks all drop.
Yeah, I like that. Wildcard 33, but free hitting 34, and probably bench boosting 37. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I like
exactly.
it. Yeah, that's different. I like it. I think there's merit. And I agree. Like, I'm looking at 31 because that's when I think I can get rid of Watkins and maybe even Foden and bring in. I've even said, like, look, if this week, I've even said to you guys in the chat, like, if it gets to a point where I'm around 1 million, I might just get rid of Haaland in my wild card and make a super squad because I'm just like, what's the point? Like, I'll try and make up captaincy and just have Son or Saka or Salah to throw the captaincy every week. Because what's the point? What's the point of me going template and captaining Haaland every week when I'm 1 million just to finish 600k? I might as well sell Haaland and just have 7 weeks of either finishing, 100k or 2 million. Because what's the difference, right? Like, oh yeah, well done guys, I finished 625k. Because I had Haaland, I captain him every week. This is no point. So the last question on this is for Tien. You are inside. You're like 75k, 80k right now. So you are very, very well positioned, not free hitting, and taking some hits to get through it. So my question is, because you are obviously planner and you are someone who does a lot of effective ownership looks, who you will not have, who are the biggest threats do you think will be to your rank? Because we don't know obviously till after the deadline, but a lot of people are going to free hit, but you're in such a high rank. Both of you have said you're getting Tony and maybe Madison, because they will be attacking your rank because it's so high. Who do you think that you won't have will be the ones to hit those high ranking people?
But for me personally, it will probably be Bowen. I might not go with him. Now, obviously, I could easily go with him and Madison as well if I just take a -8 because I can sell Saka and Gordon, no problem. Because Saka playing Man City next as well, so I'm perfectly fine to sell him. but I just don't feel West Ham. I just don't feel, like obviously, Lucian made a good point that after the European game, Aston Villa could be leggy, but yeah, I just feel like Bowen is someone that I can pick a battle against, whereas I really like Madison, and so I don't think Madison is gonna be very very highly on compared to Bowen. I think Bowen will be Bowen's EO will be a lot higher than Madison. But I'm happy to take that battle. Beside that, obviously the like of Brentford defense, because I will have none, and a lot of people will have at least one or even two. So that's gonna be gonna be thing if they keep a clean sheet as well. So yeah, those kind of thing in Spurs defense as well, if they keep a clean sheet. I don't see any clean sheet in my team.
Neither do
Moreno
I.
or Doughty or
Free
Ariola.
hit.
so yeah, I'm just sort of close my eyes and hope for the best, and hopefully some of the attacks will do this business. But yeah, as a non-free hit team, I think there's a lot of attacks coming from all different places.
Yeah, when we look at overall ownership, I don't have the tool now to see top 100k, but 27.8% ownership for Bowen is misleading because that's going to be high rank ownership inside that sort of 27.8%, right? I think, Tierney, you just checking now what he is in the top 100k.
I could do that.
Yeah, because when we're looking at overall ownership, there are a lot of dead teams out there that'll have players from game week 1, 2, and 3. But Bowen wasn't a particularly popular pick so early in the season. So if it's 27.8% overall ownership, I imagine the majority of that are actually high-ranking people, or at least inside the top 500k. Did you manage to find a number?
Bowen is currently only 32.6% in the top 100k, but that will go up to at least 80%, I think.
Yeah, because Madison's 16.1, and that'll go up. But yeah, look, it was weird that Bowen did so well when he got the hat-trick against Brentford, but that was a massive outlier on his season and his form, and I like that because I think that pushed a lot of people to not free hit who had him or said, I'll just get him to cover it, because I don't think he will. It's weird, I'm doing a free hit, but I'm choosing Bowen in my team because I think he's a good asset, but he's a shield pick against the non-free hitters in my 11. Because of his ownership and because of people sort of relying on him. So I'll just nullify that threat and attack from elsewhere. Any final points before we move on to captaincy?
As quickly as well, Madison is only 6.03%.
Nice differential, yeah. Nice differential.
Very, very low. And Brandon Johnson is 0.08.
Yeah. But I can feel myself just chucking any defenders in there and just going triple Spurs attack because they're the best attacking team going into this game week. Lucian?
I'd like to raise that shout out to Gabriel from Netted Hall. He pinpointed exactly that Luton have a massive weakness down the left, and that's how Semenyo got his brace. So I think Ilanga is worth a shout as your fifth midfielder if you don't like any of West Ham or Villa.
I did have Ilanga. We said this earlier, and he is in Ryan's team, but he was benched in the last game, and I can't explain why. And it just feels going into a free hit with a guy who's benched will come on for 10, 15 minutes just feels like a waste.
With that Ilanga thing, I think Nuno, yes, the manager, he was asked about it. And I think he replied saying he wanted to try and play compact or something for that specific game, and it didn't work. So he was like, oh, maybe we might revert back or change it again. So there is a possibility that they could go back to the older system and Ilanga could come back.
But I don't like the fact that you've just said maybe and possibly in the same sentence.
Yeah.
And who knows, he might throw a new I want to play ultra wide and Elanga's going to be like touching the line on the side, and he's not allowed to go off the line. Like, and then that's exactly where you don't want him. I mean, I want him wide, but not that wide. But yeah. So I think this is going to sound weird. I think this is going to be the most underrated, under-discussed, under-analyzed part of the week, because it's something you do every week and everyone's so focused on everything else. It's captaincy. I think this is going to be the actual thing that makes the massive jump. I think this is going to be the one that I think most are going to captain Son. If they've got Son, they're probably going to captain him. He's my captain right now. Watkins is going to be a popular captain because everyone's got him. So if you don't have Son, you're just going to captain Watkins because you've got him. But this feels like it's the one where if you get captaincy wrong this week, you're dead. Like, you are getting a huge red arrow. If you're not free hitting and you're captain blanks, you're in big trouble. If you're free hitting and your team does quite well, but your captain blanks, you know, Son doesn't get anything and Tony does well, you're okay, but you didn't take that advantage. This feels like this is the underrated decision because we're so focused on can we get 11 or 9 or 8 players or whoever. Got to focus on this. Oh, just stick it on Son. He's a normal he's like an auto captain this week, or Watkins auto captain. But it just feels like this is the one where it just feels this is going to be a big one. I think there's one of the popular captains is going to smash it and one of them isn't. And if you're not free hitting and your captain doesn't do anything, you're in huge trouble. But on the other side, if you captain Bowen and he gets 2 goals and everyone else blanks and you didn't free hit and you played 7 players, he covers the gap. I just feel feels like captaincy is the biggest thing this week. And I'm on Son right now. I'm going to wait for the European games because it just feels like a rested Tony against a bad Burnley team feels like the right move. And again, too many times this season, I've just relied on that auto captain pick, the one who I think should be the best option, when in fact I should have just chosen the guy who was playing against Sheffield United, Luton, or Burnley. And then that's where you can argue, Elanga as a captaincy because he's got Luton. But yeah, I just feels captaincy is underrated. I don't know why I feel like that. I don't see any captaincy talk on my Twitter. I see loads of free hit talk. It doesn't feel like I see a lot of debate about captaincy because I think this is a big one. So it's on Son because he is Fulham, but it's a smaller pitch at Craven Cottage, and Spurs is a team that exploits gaps and attacks a lot and holds possession and gets in behind. And I don't feel as though they've got the space for that. And Tony's on penalties and he's against Burnley and he's the absolute talisman who's going to play 90 minutes unless something happens. And if something bad happens to him, it's out of your hands. I can't be against that decision. But just with the speed that Spurs have and getting in behind and stuff, I don't think Craven Cottage is the kind of pitch to do that. But anyway, I feel Tony is the best option this week, but Son's the auto captain. And Watkins is always going to be a good shout because his effective ownership might even be over 100 this week because people are going to captain him now. It was always like 90% anyway, or 99% or 97%, but now people have to captain him because they don't have anyone else. There's no Salah, there's no Haaland to captain, so they have to captain him. He could be over 100. And if you don't captain Watkins and he scores a hat-trick and the captain blanks, it's real tough. Ryan, what are you feeling about captaincy?
I think if Son didn't score that 17-pointer and he blanked, you would have had a much bigger conversation. You would have seen all over about captaincy this week. Because to be honest, even before that Spurs game, I think there was quite a bit of conversation on this week having many captaincy options. You've already mentioned Tony, Watkins, another one, and Son is the other one. This is why TN had all 3 of them in the essential list because they are the captaincy picks for the week. I have it on Son. Do I feel fully confident on Son? Maybe to some extent. I do think he has the capabilities of getting something from this game. We do have to although consider that his last 2 games, his returns have come in like basically added time, which is in one way a bit ironic, but here we are. You probably captain him here this week as well, and it might also come in added time again. So we don't know what will happen. The thing with I would have been more tempted with Tony if I kind of saw a bit more promise from Tony stats wise. Now, obviously, it's a bit wrong to kind of compare him because he kind of had to play harder teams in the last few games. So obviously, his stats are going to look down. But then again, you still want to see him being on the end of stuff. Whereas in this case, I guess it's Wisa who's been on the end of stuff. So I don't know. It's very hard to tell if that'll carry over into this game as well, even if it's an easy opponent. But that's the one reason why I'm like slightly more towards Sun. Watkins could be a really good shout, especially if we see West Ham go to like 120 minutes and you see like Villa like clean up by 60 minutes and Watkins gets subbed off and has a rest and all. Could be a pretty decent shout as well, to be honest. But yeah, for the moment, Heung-min Son, and like you mentioned, right, captaincy on a free hit. If you don't get it right, you don't get the gain huge. But at the same time, if I'm taking a couple risk already on like different other players where like I'm not going for Bowen and all of that, I feel like I'm okay to play a bit more safer on captaincy if I'm taking the risk elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. And it's form. I know it's only the last two games Son's really hit it, but look, Tony scored 4 in 5 and he'd played Spurs, City and Liverpool in those games, but he's done nothing in the last 4. But he's played City away, West Ham away, Chelsea at home and Arsenal away. So if he's going to go on a period when he's not scoring, you know, 2 of those 4 teams are completely understandable. Away against Arsenal and away against City, I get it. You can blank against those. So, but I completely get your point. Tony's 12.6% owned. I'm not too sure what that is in the top 100k. He's in your team. If he goes and gets a hat trick and he's not your captain, it's still happy days, right? You're still having a good time. Whereas if you don't captain Son and he smashes it, but that's the same argument for Watkins. If you don't captain them and they smash it, it's not as good. Tien, what are you feeling about this captaincy?
Yeah, so I think as a non-free hit team, I think I do need to play a bit safe. So Son is currently my captain. Just because I can't really go attacking this week, right? It's a bit silly to go attack when you like basically got nothing to attack with. So yeah, chances are that you get smashed more than anything. But if I was on the free hit, I would be tempted to look elsewhere. And Tony is a very, very good option in terms of like fixtures wise. He's on pen. You just need a penalty and he scores and he's on bonus. You're right. So obviously, Sun scored in the last 2 games and got a 17-point haul. So everyone's gonna be too scared to go away from him. But if you pick sort of your free hit team is solid in terms of like you got a good core to shield again all of the all the other free hit teams, and then you can have a little bit of a pun with the captaincy as well. So in terms of like predicting EO, I think Sun is going to be the highest. But probably not to the extent of the like of Solanke or Haaland of recent weeks. Probably around 150 or maybe slightly lower compared to 180, 190 for Solanke and Haaland. And then beside that, I think Watkins will be just over 100% as well. Tony will probably be under. Because currently in the top 100k, he's only 6 point something percent. So it's not very high at all. Obviously, it will go up a lot, but even with some captaincy, I don't think it's going to be over 100. So if you do want to take a little bit of risk with captaincy and you go Tony, and if it goes well for you, I think you do have a good chance of having a very big gain because you do have covers for for your team. Right, and yeah, if Sun goes big, of course, it's gonna hurt you. But it's you have Sun, so So the damage is not going to be huge compared to the people that don't have Son or don't have some of the core sort of essential picks.
Yeah, I said it in the chat as well. Like, we've talked a lot about trust with captaincy, and it's not just Son. Do you trust Son over Tony, but also do you trust the Spurs attack over the Brentford attack, and the Fulham defense over the Burnley defense? There's a lot of factors to bring in, but I think Son's the one who's got the trust as well. And when he's got a bit of form behind him, it's tough to really look past him. Lucian, final thoughts with your captaincy then, or captaincy in general?
Ivan Tony.
Huh?
Ivan Tony. I don't see Fulham
Tony.
as weak. Yeah. I think my biggest issue is that I do rate Fulham at home. I think we've just not spoken about them enough. So shout out to Combe. And I just think that, yeah, Fulham will bring a surprise. I think Spurs look good because their opponents have been bad. And I think Fulham will give them a decent run around. And that's why I still feel that Ivan Toney, just like last week, predicted that Dominic Solanke penalty. I don't see anything different happening here. I'm very sure an Ivan Toney penalty would give him at least 8 points. I'll take that.
And Fulham aren't in the worst form. They've only lost, 3 in the last 11. I think it's drawn 2, lost 3, won 4. And those include games like Arsenal, who they beat, Chelsea, Everton, Burnley, Bournemouth, Villa, United, Brighton and Wolves. So, but it doesn't feel like they concede more than 2 goals a game.
Yeah,
they
attacking numbers are really good.
No, defensively they haven't conceded.
Defensively, yeah.
They haven't conceded more than 2 goals. They got beat 3-0 at Bournemouth in week 19 and 3-0 at Newcastle in 17. 4-3 against Liverpool. But yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, and Fulham at home. I'd have to check the home and away record because that's the thing that puts me off, Watkins. If you remember how amazing Villa were at home and how bad they were away, which is strange because they've just been smashed. Oh no, they've just been smashed 4-0 at home to Spurs, which is the opposite of what they did before. So, yeah, okay. Any final?
Just one quick point. Just a couple quick points. So the what do we call it? The myth of Villa being much better at home compared to away. But if you look at Watkins' record, he got the 13-point haul against Luton away, 13-point haul against Fulham away, 18-point haul against Sheffield United away. So don't just take that without.
But that's Sheffield and Luton.
Well, West Ham is potentially equally bad defensively. If you look at that, well, if you look at the defensive record, West Ham is down there.
Yeah, they're not
he's
great.
Down there.
But they're not Luton. They're not Luton. You can't compare them to Luton and Sheffield. They're adrift.
Yeah,
they're adrift.
Yeah, and one final point: it's Ivan Toney's birthday on Saturday.
Captain,
so if that's swing
anybody, did he score
anybody,
last birthday? I think he did. Honestly, I think it feels like birthday boys when they're a striker score.
The stars are aligning, Rob.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Might be tempted.
Yeah. Any final points? That's it, guys. We're done for the blank game week. Yeah. All right.
Good
great.
luck with everybody.
Yeah. Good luck, guys. Whatever you do. You've made the decision. Once the deadline's gone, don't worry about it. Enjoy the short fixtures of football before a wonderful international break, which we always all love on the door. Maybe leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here. We'll be back. Maybe is it a long break after this? So we might be back in 2 weeks because if there's an international break. But we'll let you know. We're all on Twitter. Our handles are underneath us here. You can follow us on there. And as always, have a